Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to Gaia Sanctorum. I'm Danielle, and this is Living the Wheel, where we follow the cycles of nature and the cosmos and the wisdom of the five bodies to navigate our human experience with ancient knowledge and embodied practices. Last week, the cosmos handed you something rare and deliberate, a week of strategic stillness before everything changed. Mars stood at 29 degrees of Pisces, electric and trembling at the threshold. And then he crossed. He came home to Aries, and Neptune was waiting, not to dissolve him again, but to show him the vision that his sovereignty was always in service of. Venus sextiled the North Node, and your soul found its compass bearing without drama or force. The warrior sharpened his blade. He fed himself well. He slept deeply. He came into complete alignment with his own center. That was last week. That was the quiet before the roar. And now the roar is here. I want to be honest with you about what this week is actually feeling like in my body, because I think that some of you are feeling it too, and you may not understand why. I am an Aries rising with my sun, moon, Mercury, and Chiron all in Aries. This stellium is not abstract to me. It is landing in my nervous system. I have been doing conscious breath work every single day this week because the energy has been so intense. It almost feels like I'm having palpitations. That chomping at the bit feeling, that barely contained urgency of something enormous trying to move through a body that is still learning how to hold it. And I think I understand why. Uranus has been moving through Taurus for 7 years. Neptune has been in Pisces for over a decade. For those of us with strong Aries signatures, that combination has felt like trying to run in quicksand. The vision and the fire, absolutely present, but the movement, sluggish, constrained, like everything was being held just below the surface, waiting for that moment of release. That moment is now. The sloughing is happening, and every cell in my body wants me to run. But here is what Saturn in Aries is teaching me in real time. You cannot light the primary burn without first confirming that the structure will hold it. Half a second of discipline before ignition is not timidity. It is the difference between a successful launch and a beautiful explosion that goes nowhere. That is the chaos that I am personally navigating this week. And that is exactly why this episode is about Earth medicine. Let me show you what this actually looks like in the chart, because this is how transits work personally. And I want you to be able to do this for yourself. My natal Mercury sits at 28 degrees and 38 minutes of Aries. Now, the new moon this week lands at 27 degrees, 28 minutes of Aries on the outer wheel. This is just over 1 degree of separation, a conjunction in orb. Mercury governs the mental body, how we think, how we communicate, how we find language for what we know. A new moon conjuncting my natal Mercury means the seed being planted, this lunation, lives specifically in my voice, in my teaching, in the new language emerging for what I carried. Whatever I have been circling without quite having words for it, this new moon is asking it to be spoken. And then there's this one. And this one stopped me in my tracks when I saw it. Mars and Saturn are conjuncting at 7 degrees, 51 minutes Aries this week. My natal moon sits at 7 degrees, 40 minutes of Aries. That is 11 arc minutes of separation, essentially exact. Now, the moon governs the emotional body, the feeling life, the instinctual responses, the deep interior landscape of how we experience being alive. Having Mars and Saturn both land on my natal moon simultaneously means that the warrior and the elder are showing up in my emotional life at the same moment. Mars says, feel it fully, bring your passion, let the fire move. Saturn says, structure that feeling, give it direction. Don't let the emotion become chaos. Together, on my moon, they're asking my emotional body to grow into something more disciplined and directed without losing its feeling depth. This is the astrology made personal. Pull your own chart. Look at where your Aries placements sit. Because if you have any planets in Aries, this stellium is activating them based on those exact degrees. And this is why we don't just watch the sky in abstract. The sky is always in conversation with your specific chart. And this week, that conversation is very, very loud. That feeling has a name in the language of space exploration. It's called the primary burn. When a rocket launches, the primary burn is the moment of maximum thrust. Every ounce of fuel committed to a single purpose, escaping the gravitational pull of everything that has held you earthbound. There is no throttling back in a primary burn. There is no reconsideration. The mission commits everything it has to one singular direction, or it doesn't make orbit. This is the week the cosmos is asking for your primary burn. So let's look at the sky. So the week opens on April 13th with Venus sextile Jupiter at 16 degrees, 47 minutes. A grace note, an exhale, a moment of genuine ease before the ignition sequence begins. Venus in Taurus is grounded and sensory and certain of her own worth. She's forming a flowing sextile with Jupiter, exalted in Cancer. Abundance meeting nourishment, values meeting expansion, your soul being reminded that what you are launching toward is genuinely worth the fuel it is about to cost you. Let this transit be your pre-launch confirmation that the destination is real and the trajectory is sound. Then, April 14th carries electricity. Mercury reaches 29 degrees of Pisces. This is the anaretic degree, the last breath before the crossing. And when Mercury is there, it will form a sextile to Uranus in Taurus. Something in the way that you have been thinking, in the way that you have been speaking, simply releases. Through the sextile's flowing ease, it lets go. The messenger is about to cross into fire, and she is dropping the last bit of water weight before she does. Now, on April 15th, Mercury makes its ingress into Aries. After weeks of intuitive dreaming and dissolving Pisces cognition, Mercury now stands in the sign of the pioneer, and thought becomes direct and sharp and immediate. The vision that has been gestating in the waters is now available to be spoken clearly and pursued with intent. As an Aries rising, I feel this shift every year like a door opening. Suddenly, I can think in straight lines again. Suddenly, the words that have been swimming just out of reach, they find their edges. Now, on April 16th, we're carrying two significant signatures. The sun is conjuncting Chiron at 26 degrees, 38 minutes of Aries, the wounded healer at the center of the self, the place where the deepest wound and the greatest gift occupy exactly the same address. The light shining directly on what has been broken open and what has been built from that breaking. And Mars then sextiles Pluto at 5 degrees, 25 minutes. The warrior in flowing conversation with the transformer, the depth of what you have been through, becoming available as fuel rather than weight. And then April 17th is the axis of the entire week. So we have Mercury conjuncting Neptune at 2 degrees, 47 minutes of Aries, the newly fire-minded messenger meeting the mystic, the vision being translated into language for the first time. The dream is able to find its words. And then the new moon in Aries is at 27 degrees, 28 minutes. And I need you to understand what this new moon chart looks like. When the moon meets the sun at 27 degrees of Aries, she is not arriving to an empty room. She is arriving to find Mercury, Mars, Saturn, Neptune, and Chiron all gathered in the same sign. 7 celestial bodies in Aries at the moment of the new moon. 7 ignition points firing simultaneously. This is not one of those gentle seeding lunations. This is the moment the launch director says, go for the main engine start, and every system in the rocket comes alive at once. For me personally, the new moon at 27 degrees, 28 minutes is within 1 degree of my natal Mercury at 28 degrees, 38 minutes. Planting its seed directly in my mental body, in my voice, in the new language emerging for what I carry and what I teach. And Mars and Saturn conjuncting at 7 degrees, 51 minutes are sitting essentially exactly on my natal moon at 7 degrees, 40 minutes. The warrior and the elder are arriving simultaneously in my emotional life. What in your chart does the new moon find? What has been quietly burning that is ready for its primary burn? April 18th, Mercury sextiles Pluto at 5 degrees, 26 minutes. And the words for what you have survived and what you have built from the surviving are going to become available. And April 19th, the week closes with Mars conjunct Saturn at 7 degrees, 51 minutes of Aries. The warrior meets the elder. Fire meets form. This is the engine cutoff of the primary burn. The moment that the thrust completes and the craft is either in trajectory or it's not. Saturn will not let you burn forever. He arrives at the precise moment that the burn needs to become direction. Cuts the engines and says, now you navigate on what you committed to. That is the arc of this week. Confirmation, threshold crossing, wounding that reveals a gift, the vision finding language, and the 7-planet ignition, the mind meeting its own depth, and finally, the form that holds the fire in trajectory. It's going to be a big week. Let's talk about the 5 bodies through the primary burn. If this is resonating with you, I'd love for you to like this video and share it with someone who needs it. And if you want to keep walking this path together, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so we never miss each other. I'm so glad you're here. Now, the body that is about to carry 7 planets worth of fire needs to be the launch pad, not the fuel. In a rocket launch, the launch pad doesn't burn, it holds. It absorbs the force of the ignition without being consumed by it. It is built from the densest, most heat resistant materials available precisely because it has to remain intact while everything around it is on fire. Your physical body this week is being asked to be that structure. And I will tell you honestly, as someone whose nervous system has been running hot all week, this is not abstract advice. The breath work that I mentioned is not optional for me right now. Earth medicine is not about dampening that fire. It is about giving it a structure strong enough to hold it. So this week, we feed the physical body from the earth up. So the first food that I'm going to recommend for you is butter beans with smoked ham hock. This is foundational earth medicine in its most honest form. Butter beans are among the most grounding legumes available. They are dense with plant protein and complex carbohydrates that release slowly and steadily, and the kind of fiber that feeds the gut microbiome at its deepest levels. Now, the ham hock brings in collagen and minerals and slowly rendered richness of an animal that spent its life close to the earth. This is not a quick meal. You cannot rush butter beans and ham hocks. They need time and low heat and patience, and that is precisely the teaching. The next food I'm going to recommend is polenta with smoked salmon, sun-dried tomatoes, and preserved lemon. The corn that becomes polenta is one of the most grounding grains available. It is dense, it is mineral rich, and deeply satisfying in a way that really lands in the body rather than sitting in the head. The smoked salmon is bringing omega-3 fatty acids, specifically anti-inflammatory for a nervous system running as hot as yours might be this week, along with iodine and selenium that support your thyroid function and cellular energy production. The preserved lemon brings the digestive intelligence that makes sure that the body can actually absorb what it is being given. And then oyster stuffed portobellos. The mycelial kingdom and the ocean meeting on one plate. So oysters are among the most mineral-dense foods on Earth. Zinc for immune function, copper for connective tissue integrity, B12 for nervous system resilience, iron for the blood that carries oxygen to every tissue asked to sustain a burn. The portobello is the Earth container, carrying immune modulating beta glucans of the fungal world and meatiness that feels genuinely nourishing. Stuffed and roasted together, they become something ceremonial, something made for a significant occasion, because this week actually is one. Now, as far as herbs, nettle. If there is a single herb built for the physical body in a week of this much fire, it is nettle. She is the great mineral powerhouse of the plant world. Iron, calcium, magnesium, silica, potassium, chlorophyll, dense with the foundational building blocks of the physical body that needs to remain structurally sound under high demand. Now, nettle is not glamorous medicine. She promises that your bones will hold, your blood will carry oxygen efficiently, and your tissues will remain resilient. Nourish the structure so the structure can hold the fire. Nettle as a strong infusion steeped overnight, drank throughout the day, is the most bioavailable preparation available. Ashwagandha, the great adaptogen of the Ayurvedic tradition, specifically indicated when the nervous system is being asked to sustain high output over an extended period without collapsing into depletion. Her withanolides work at the level of the HPA axis, modulating cortisol, supporting adrenal resilience, and building the kind of sustained physical endurance that does not depend on adrenaline alone. For a physical body that has been running hot for days and is about to be asked to sustain a 7-planet new moon, ashwagandha is the ground crew making sure the systems don't overheat. It is best taken as a milk decoction, simmered in warm milk with a little bit of honey and cinnamon. It really is delicious. And then chaga. Chaga is the mycelial elder. It grows on birch trees in the cold northern forests, developing over years into one of the most antioxidant rich substances in the natural world. She is not fast medicine. She arrives the way the earth arrives: slow, dense, profoundly present, utterly reliable. Her betulinic acid supports DNA integrity under conditions of oxidative stress. Her polysaccharides modulate the immune system with a quiet intelligence that neither overstimulates nor sedates, but simply just supports. Brew her as a long decocted tea. Simmer low and slow for several hours. Strain and drink throughout the day. Like the butterbeans, she can't be rushed. That is the point. Now, for your practice, we're going to do a little bit of walking meditation. So I want you to go outside, take your shoes off if the ground allows it. Begin walking at roughly half your natural pace, deliberately enough that each footfall is conscious. I want you to feel the ground receiving your weight with each step. This is the launch pad holding the rocket. The Earth does not flinch, it simply holds. With each inhale, feel the Earth energy rising through the soles of your feet, into your legs and pelvis. With each exhale, feel yourself releasing the excess fire downward, not losing it, but returning the surplus to Earth for safekeeping until you need it. Continue this for a minimum of 20 minutes. If your mind wanders to the launch plan, the urgency of everything that needs doing, let it, and then bring it back to the next footfall, the next point of contact between your body and the earth. The physical body that is about to carry a maximum thrust needs to know that the earth is there. This practice is how you confirm it. Now, your journaling question for the physical body: if your body were the launch pad, what does it need from you this week to hold the weight of what you are launching? Now, let's move on to the mental body. So, the mind that is about to receive 7 planets worth of ignition needs to know where it is pointing before the burn begins. So Mercury enters Aries on April 15th, moving out of the dreaming, dissolving Pisces cognition and into the sharp, direct fire of Aries, where the mind wants to move fast and decide quickly and act immediately. And then Mercury conjuncts Neptune at 2 degrees of Aries, the newly fire-minded messenger meeting the mystic, the vision finding language for the first time. My natal Mercury sits at 28 degrees, 38 minutes of Aries, a mind that has always been built for fire, for directness, for cutting to the essential thing. After weeks of Pisces Mercury fogging the signal, transiting Mercury, crossing into Aries, and moving toward my natal placement, feels like a radio suddenly finding the station. But here is the shadow of a fire mind in a fire week. It scatters. It ignites in 17 directions simultaneously and calls that productivity. The Aries mental body, at its least disciplined, is all spark and no sustained flame. Saturn in Aries is the corrective, the elder standing in the fire saying, pick one, know it completely, and commit. Now, for foods. First food I'm going to recommend is almond crusted salmon with mango jicama relish. So the salmon is bringing DHA, the omega-3 fatty acid that comprises a significant portion of the brain's actual structure. And it also supports the speed and the clarity of the neural transmission. The almond crust adds vitamin E and magnesium for neurotransmitter production and sustained mental energy. And then mango jicama relish arrives and changes the conversation just a little bit. It brings brightness and crispness, lime and cilantro cutting through the richness, a mind that can hold complexity without collapsing into it. And then next would be buckwheat banana pancakes. Now, buckwheat is a seed carrying a nutrient profile that speaks directly to the mental body. Rutin supports cerebrovascular circulation, the blood flow delivering oxygen and glucose to the brain, magnesium for the nervous system, B vitamins for neurotransmitter synthesis. And the banana brings potassium and natural sugars the brain absorbs efficiently. And there's something grounding about a warm stack of pancakes on a fire week. The slowness of the making, the simplicity of the ingredients, the way they ask you to sit down without urgency. And then fried plantains with avocado cilantro crema. The plantain is banana's earthier, more complex sibling. It is starchier, denser, more slowly metabolized. Resistant starch from the plantain feeds the gut bacteria that produce serotonin and GABA, the neurotransmitters that allow the mental body to remain calm and focused rather than anxious and scattered. The avocado crema slows absorption, extending the cognitive fuel curve rather than burning it in one bright spike. Cilantro is a gentle chelating herb, supporting the liver's capacity to clear the metabolic byproducts of high mental output. And now for herbs. This week, we're going to go with some very classic nervines. Lemon balm, the paradoxical herb of the mental body this week. She calms without sedating, clarifies without stimulating, and creates the quality of relaxed alertness and focused attention that this week actually requires. The mind running on anxiety and urgency cannot focus, it can only react. Lemon balm works specifically on the GABA pathways that allow the nervous system to downshift from reactive to responsive, from scattered fire to a directed flame. In the Melissa tradition, she has been called the herb of the scholar, not because she sharpens the mind through stimulation, but because she creates the internal quiet in which genuine thinking becomes possible. And then holy basil, Tulsi, the sacred basil of the Ayurvedic tradition. Her adaptogenic action specifically addresses the cognitive impacts of sustained stress, the brain fog, the decision fatigue, the difficulty maintaining concentration that arrives when the adrenals have been running hot for way too long. Tulsi's deeper gift to the mental body this week is her capacity to support what Ayurveda calls sattva, the quality of clear, luminous intelligence that perceives without distortion. In a week where the fire mind wants to move fast and decide quickly, Tulsi slows the perception just enough to ensure that what you're seeing is actually what is there. And then elecampane. This is a bridge herb, most distinctly at the intersection of fire and earth in this week's mental body. Elecampane is solar in her correspondence, tall and golden and radiantly present, but her medicine works in the deep interior. Matthew Wood writes of her affinity for people who are ahead of their time, whose minds perceive connections that the mainstream hasn't caught up to yet. For the mental body in a week of 7 planets in Aries, elecampane helps the visionary mind stay rooted in its own knowing rather than being swept into reactivity. Best prepared as a decoction of the root, simmered slowly and drunk with intention. Now, your practice for this week is a complete sensory immersion. So I want you to choose one object, anything within reach. What matters is that you choose one thing and commit to it completely. So I want you to describe it either out loud or in writing. And the key here is to work through every sensory channel methodically and exhaustively. You start with your sight, every color, every variation of light and shadow, every edge and surface texture. Even when you think that you have covered it, look deeper. And then touch the weight, the temperature, the texture under your fingertips. When it comes to sound, does it make a sound if you tap it or move it? Smell, bring it close and find what is there. Taste it if it is safe to do so. Stay with the object until you have genuinely exhausted your perception of it, until there's nothing left to notice. Most people discover that this takes significantly longer than expected, and that the mind that arrived scattered and urgent has, by the end of it, become completely still. That stillness is the launchpad state, the mental body ready for ignition. Now, for your journaling question, what thought have you been circling for months that this new moon is finally asking you to commit to, or release your grip on it entirely? Now let's move on to the emotional body. You cannot launch from a field of unprocessed feeling. Aries emotion is immediate, intense, and moves fast. It does not simmer, it ignites. When 7 planets are gathered in the same sign at the moment of the new lunar cycle, the emotional field is not gently stirred. It is activated at every layer simultaneously. The shadow of this week for the emotional body is reactivity masquerading as passion, urgency masquerading as clarity, the fire that burns through relationships and opportunities because it cannot tell the difference between genuine courage and the adrenaline of overwhelm. A new moon is not a release point. That is full moon work. A new moon is a seeding, which means that the question this week is not, what am I feeling? It is, what do I want to feel? What emotional frequency do I want to launch from? And am I willing to consciously cultivate that rather than simply react to whatever the fire stirs up? Mars and Saturn are conjuncting at 7 degrees, 51 minutes of Aries this week, essentially exactly on my natal moon. What I am personally seeding in my emotional body this new moon is the capacity to hold both. to feel the fire fully without being consumed by it, to let the passion be present without letting it make my decisions for me. That is the emotional launch pad that I want to launch from. Not the absence of feeling, but the sovereign relationship with feeling. Now, some foods that can help with that. Mashed parsnips with apples and apricots. So, sweetness and the earth in the same bowl. The parsnip is a root grown in darkness, in slow, patient intelligence of soil, and its medicine to the emotional body is exactly that quality of unhurried groundedness. The natural sugars in parsnip release slowly. They support stable blood sugar, and that is the foundation of emotional regulation. The apple brings malic acid that supports liver function. And in both Western and Chinese medicine, the liver is the seat of emotional processing. The apricot brings beta carotene and a gentle warmth that feels almost maternal. This is a dish that holds the emotional body in a way good ancestral medicine always has. And then chestnut pudding. There is something about chestnut that belongs specifically to the emotional body in a fire week. The chestnut is the most starchy and least fatty of all nuts. Ground into flour, it becomes dense and warming and subtly sweet with a genuine substance that the emotional body craves when it is being asked to hold a lot. In the mountain traditions of Southern Europe, the French Alps, the Apennines, the Greek highlands, chestnut was a survival food, winter food, the food that held people through the long, dark cold when nothing else was available. To eat chestnut pudding is to receive the emotional intelligence of the people who knew how to find sweetness in the middle of difficulty. That transmission is in the food. Let it hold you. And then pumpkin coconut curry, the fire that warms rather than burns. Pumpkin is deeply grounding, a dense, mineral rich, beta carotene laden gourd that carries its medicine in that warm orange flesh. In Ayurvedic understanding, pumpkin is cooling and grounding to vata, the wind and fire constitution most activated in a week like this one. The coconut milk fats specifically support the myelin sheath that insulates the nervous system, reducing the rawness that comes from sustained emotional activation. And the curry spices are the digestive intelligence that ensures that the emotional body can actually absorb the nourishment. This is a bowl that says you are safe to feel what you are feeling. Now for some herbs. Chamomile. Chamomile is the great emotional body herb of the European tradition and one of the most underestimated plants in the Western apothecary. Chamomile works specifically on the solar plexus, releasing the tension that accumulates there when the emotional body has been holding too much for too long. Her azulene is specifically anti-inflammatory to the gut lining where emotional stress most often lands physically. Her apigenin binds to the benzodiazepine receptors in the brain with a gentle anxiolytic action that does not sedate, but simply reduces the volume on emotional overwhelm enough that the body can actually feel like it can breathe again. And then lavender, the nervous system's most loyal ally in the plant world. Lavender works simultaneously on the emotional body and the physical nervous system. Her linalool and linalool acetate crossing the blood-brain barrier through both olfactory and oral routes to modulate the stress response at its source. But lavender's gift to the emotional body this week is more specific than general calming. She supports emotional courage, the capacity to feel different things without avoidance, to stay present in that intensity without being overwhelmed. As an essential oil in a diffuser or applied to the pulse points as a tea, or as a simple bunch of dried flowers held in the hands during the journaling practice. Now, next would be skullcap, the nerve herb that belongs specifically to the emotional body in a week of this much activation. Skullcap works on the nervous system at the level of myelin sheath. When the nervous system has been running hot for an extended period, the myelin begins to fray and the signals become noisy. Emotions arrive with more charge than their content warrants. Everything feels slightly too loud, slightly too much. Skullcap restores the insulation. She does not suppress the signal. She ensures that it travels cleanly. Combined with chamomile and lemon balm in a tea, she is one of the most effective nervine formulas available for the emotional body under sustained pressure. I've been drinking it for a few days now. Now, for your practice, conscious emotional seeding. So I want you to find a quiet moment, ideally on the evening of the new moon itself, April 17th. Through the days immediately surrounding it that are carrying the same energy. Come into stillness. Place one hand on your heart, one on your belly, and take 3 slow breaths. And let the present moment have your full attention. Ask yourself honestly, what emotional frequency am I actually launching from right now? Not what do I want to feel? What is genuinely present? Name it without judgment, urgency, excitement, fear, grief, hope, exhaustion, aliveness, whatever is there. Let it be there and name it. Then ask the second question. What emotional frequency do I want to be operating from as I move through this new cycle? Not a performance of positivity, a genuine choice. Write both answers down. The gap between them is not a failure. It is data. It shows you exactly what the emotional body needs to be tended with through the coming weeks. And then write your emotional seed. One sentence beginning with, I am calling in, and name the frequency that you are choosing to grow. Speak it aloud. Let your own voice carry it into the field. Now, for your journaling question, Aries is the sign of the pioneer. What would you dare to feel if you knew the fire would hold you rather than consume you? The subtle body that is about to carry 7 planets worth of fire needs to be a clear channel before ignition, not a tangled one. A rocket does not generate thrust through brute force alone. It generates thrust through precision engineering, through channels designed to direct the fuel exactly where it needs to go without leakage or obstruction. Your energetic field this week is that system of channels. And the question is not whether you have enough fire. The sky is providing way more than enough. The question is whether your channels are clear enough to carry it. For those of us moving through the long dissolution of Neptune in Pisces and the slow restructuring of Uranus in Taurus, the energetic field has accumulated the residue of years of constrained movement. The flow has been there, but it has been working against resistance. This week, that resistance is being asked to clear because what is coming through the channel is too powerful for obstruction. The energetic body this week is not being asked to generate more energy. It is being asked to get out of its own way. So some foods that will help with that. Spinach salad with poppy seed dressing. The iron in the spinach is the energetic body's most foundational physical support. The mineral that carries oxygen through the blood to every cell needs to fire cleanly and efficiently. Without sufficient iron, the energetic field runs dim, regardless of how much fire the sky is providing. And the poppy seed dressing brings calcium and essential fatty acids that support the myelin sheath. Raw spinach preserves the folate that supports cellular energy production at its most basic level. Do not underestimate this dish because it is a salad. And then cabbage rolls, cruciferous and deeply mineral dense. Cabbage carries sulforaphane and indole 3 carbinol that support the liver's phase 2 detoxification pathways. The process that clears the metabolic debris that accumulates in the energetic field during periods of sustained stress. The rolling and stuffing of cabbage rolls is in itself a practice. The deliberate wrapping of nourishment in a protective layer, the slow braising that transforms raw ingredients into something that holds together under heat. The energetic body this week needs both the clearing intelligence of the cabbage and the teaching of the preparation. And then smash Brussels sprouts with garlic and Parmesan. The smashing is the point. Brussels sprouts intact are fine. Smashed, they become something else entirely. The cell walls rupture, the surface area increases, and the caramelization at the edges produces compounds that did not exist in the whole sprout. Sometimes the energetic body needs to be smashed open to access what it contains. The garlic brings allicin, one of the most powerful circulation enhancing compounds in the plant world, moving stagnant energy through the channels the way a strong current moves debris from a riverbed. Now for some herbs. Ginseng. Ginseng is the great key tonic of the Chinese herbal tradition. Panax ginseng works specifically on what Chinese medicine calls the Wei Qi, the defensive vital energy that forms the first layer of the energetic field, the boundary between self and environment that determines what gets in and what does not. In a week when the energetic field is being asked to carry maximum thrust, ginseng ensures that the channels are not just clear, but actively supported, building the deep energetic reserve that sustains output without depletion. And she is not a short-term stimulant. She is a long-term builder. And then licorice root. This is the harmonizer. In Western and Chinese traditions, licorice root is the herb that makes other herbs work better. The great synergist that opens channels so that medicine can be fully received and utilized. Her direct action on the energetic body this week is through the adrenal glands, the physical organs most directly correlated with the energetic body's capacity to sustain output. Licorice root supports cortisol metabolism, preventing adrenal exhaustion that arrives when the fire has been burning too hot for too long. Note that licorice root is contraindicated with high blood pressure. Use DGL in those cases. Next would be red clover. Now, this is a blood purifier and a channel opener of the European folk tradition. Red clover's isoflavones and coumarin compounds support lymphatic flow. The system most directly responsible for cleaning the energetic debris that accumulates in the field during sustained activation, where nettle builds the physical structure and ashwagandha builds the adaptive capacity. Red clover clears the channels through which all that building can actually be expressed. It is gentle enough for long-term use and cumulative in her action. The more consistently she is taken, the cleaner the field becomes. As a long infusion, similar to nettle as a tincture, taken 3 times daily through the week. Now, your practice for the energetic body is a chakra alignment meditation. I want you to come into a comfortable seated position with a long spine. Take 3 slow breaths and feel the weight of your body supported by whatever is beneath you. Begin at the root. Visualize a deep red sphere of light at the base of your spine, dense, slow moving, profoundly grounded. Feel its connection downward into the earth beneath you. This is your launch pad. Move upward to the sacral center, 2 inches below the navel. Orange light, fluid, creative. In a fire week, this center may be overactivated. Let your breath slow it to its natural rhythm. Then move on to your solar plexus. Yellow light, the seat of personal will, the center most directly activated by the Aries stellium, bright and clear and centered in its own authority. And then the heart center, green light, the integrating center where the lower and upper chakras meet. Feel it open and soft. Let it be the bridge. And then the throat, blue light, the center of authentic expression. Mercury entering Aries and conjuncting Neptune is activating this center powerfully. Feel the channel clear. And then the third eye, indigo light, the center of vision and perception. Let it receive without grasping. And then the crown, violet light, dissolving into white, the connection to what is larger than the personal self. Feel it open upward, the way the root opens downward. Now feel the whole column simultaneously, root to crown, earth to sky, launch pad to trajectory in one continuous line of clear, energetic intelligence. And affirm, I am a clear channel. The fire moves through me without consuming me. I am the launch pad and the trajectory simultaneously. And for your journaling question, where in your life have you been burning fuel on a trajectory that is no longer yours? And what would it feel like to redirect that thrust? Let's move on to the spiritual body. The soul does not launch alone. Every primary burn in the history of human spaceflight has had a ground crew. Hundreds of people whose names will never appear in the history books, whose work happens entirely in the hidden infrastructure that makes the visible launch possible. The astronaut gets the trajectory. The ground crew makes it survivable. Your spiritual body this week is being asked to remember its ground crew, not as a comforting metaphor, as a lived devotional reality. The understanding that what you are launching toward has been held in the consciousness of something larger than your personal will for much longer than you have been planning it. The ancestors who carried the lineage to this moment, the divine intelligences who tend the sacred fires the human hands cannot reach, the cosmos itself, which has been arranging this stellium for longer than any of us have been alive. You did not arrive at this new moon by yourself. You arrived carried. This week, the spiritual body is asked to make that carrying conscious, to stop treating the launch as a solo mission, and to actively invoke the ground crew that has been there all along. And in the tradition that I work from, that invocation has two faces, two fires, and two intelligences that between them hold the complete spectrum of what sacred fire actually is: Hestia and Dionysus. Now, Hestia is the oldest of the Olympians and the most overlooked, the goddess of the hearth, the sacred flame, the fire that never goes out. Every Greek home had a Hestia flame. Every temple, every civic gathering began with an offering to Hestia because without the tended fire, nothing else was possible. She did not have myths in the dramatic sense. She simply tended with absolute devotion and absolute reliability. She kept the flame alive through every storm, every disruption, every single season of difficulty. That is her power, not the power of conquest or transformation, but the power of the fire that is always there when you return to it. Now, Dionysus is her complement and her opposite, the god of ecstatic transformation, of the vine, of the sacred wildness that dissolves the constructed self into something larger and truer. His fire does not stay in one place. It moves, it leaps, it consumes what is ready to be consumed, and it transforms into something the rational mind could not have planned. His rites were the experience of being taken beyond what you thought you were into what you actually are. Together, they hold the complete sacred fire. Hestia is the flame that you tend. Dionysus is the flame that tends you. At the new moon, we are seeding the devotional commitment of Hestia and the ecstatic yes of Dionysus into the new cycle simultaneously. The sustained tending and the wild aliveness, the hearth and the transformation, the ground crew and the launch. The work I am building, the retreat center, the ancestral healing lineage, the Greece chapter, it requires both of these fires. The Hestia devotion of someone who shows up every single day to tend the flame, even when no one is watching. And the Dionysian, yes, the ecstatic, full bodied commitment to the vision that says, I am not doing this because it is safe or sensible. I am doing this because it is true, because something larger than my personal preference has been calling me toward this ground for my entire life. And I'm finally ready to answer that without apology. That is what I'm seeding at this new moon in this spiritual body, the tending and the yes, simultaneously as one invocation. Now for food: roasted pork with figs and brie. This is a feast dish, not in the sense of excess, but in the original sacred sense, a meal that marks a threshold. Pork has been a sacred feast animal across Europe, Asian, and Mediterranean traditions for millennia. The figs are among the oldest cultivated fruits in human history, appearing in Greek and Roman and Egyptian and Levantine sacred contexts, sweet and seeded and dense with the intelligence of ancient cultivation. The brie brings fermented depth of aged milk, the slow transformation of something simple into something profound through the patient action of invisible intelligence. Together, they say, this moment is sacred. Sit down, eat slowly, let the meal be the ritual. And next would be gulabe dood. It is a warmed milk with rose and cardamom. Rose opens the heart with protection. Cardamom opens the channels connecting the heart to the higher centers, creating a warm and luminous pathway between feeling and vision, between personal and transpersonal. Warmed milk carries tryptophan. This is the precursor to serotonin and melatonin, creating the calm, receptive state in which spiritual transmission is most easily received. This is the drink you make before the invocation practice. Hold the cup in both hands. Feel the warmth. Smell the rose. Let the cardamom open the channels before you speak a single word of invocation. And then adzuki bean and barley salad. The deep ancestral earth medicine of this dish lives in its simplicity and in its lineage. Adzuki beans have been cultivated in East Asia for over 3,000 years. Small, dark red, dense with kidney supporting, blood building intelligence that Chinese medicine has always associated with the deepest vital reserves. And barley is older still, one of the very first cultivated grains appearing in the earliest agricultural settlements of the Fertile Crescent, carrying the intelligence of tens of thousands of years of human relationship with a plant. To eat adzuki beans and barley is to eat something that human hands have been preparing since before recorded history. The spiritual body receives that transmission without needing to be told. Now for herbs, saffron. Saffron is the most sacred spice in the ancient world. In the ancient world, she was offered to the gods, woven into ceremonial garments used in the preparation of sacred spaces. Her saffronol and crocin compounds support serotonin metabolism and cognitive function. But her spiritual gift is something the research has not yet fully named. She lifts not into disassociation or euphoria, but into a quality of luminous clarity that feels like the mind becoming more fully itself. For the spiritual body, invoking the sacred fire this week, saffron and warm milk or golden rice is the preparation that opens the channel from the personal to the divine. And then valerian. Valerian is a threshold herb. Valerian stands at the boundary between waking and sleeping mind and facilitates conscious passage between them. In the context of the spiritual body, at a new moon with this much Aries fire, valerian is not being used as a sedative. She is being used as a dream seeder, taken in a moderate dose before sleep on the night of the new moon. She supports the hypnagogic state where the unconscious mind is most accessible, where the images and transmissions the rational mind cannot receive, they begin to surface. She is the bridge between the ritual and the dream, between the intention and the unconscious knowing that confirms it, and then cinnamon. The sacred spice of every major spiritual tradition that has encountered it, appearing in the Hebrew in the sacred anointing oil, in Egyptian embalming preparations, in Ayurvedic rasayanas, in traditional Chinese medicine, in European folk magic as an herb of prosperity, protection, and the activation of sacred space. Her volatile oils create the quality of energetic warmth that makes sacred space feel alive rather than merely designated. Her physical actions support circulation and blood sugar stability, keeping the physical body grounded and present enough to hold the spiritual experience without floating away from it. Now, for your spiritual practice, we're going to do a Hestia and Dionysus invocation. So prepare your space, light a candle. This is your Hestia flame. If you have made your gulabi dood, hold it in your hands now. Sit before the candle. Take 3 slow, deep breaths and feel the flame as a living intelligence, something that requires tending, that transforms what it touches without being consumed itself. Begin with Hestia. Speak to her directly in whatever words come naturally to you. Tell her what you are committing to tend through this new cycle, not the grand vision, the daily devotion, the specific showing up, the specific flame that you are committing to keep alive, even when nobody is watching. Ask her to hold that commitment with you. Then you're going to call in Dionysus. This part does not need to be solemn. Dionysus responds to aliveness, to genuine enthusiasm, to the body saying yes with its whole self. Stand if you feel called to. Move if your body wants to move. Speak or sing or shout if that is what is true. The ecstatic yes of what you're launching toward, not the plan, the feeling of it. Let that yes be as big and as wild and as genuine as it actually is. And then return to the candle, to Hestia's steady flame. Let the wildness settle back into a tended fire. Feel both intelligences present simultaneously, the ecstatic and the devoted, the wild and the steady, the launch and the ground crew. When you are complete, do not blow the candle out. Let it burn until it is safe to leave it or snuff it with intention. Knowing the Hestia flame is never truly extinguished. It simply waits for you to return. And then I want you to affirm, I tend the flame that does not go out. I say yes to the fire that transforms. I launch carried by both. Now your journaling question. Hestia tends the flame that never goes out, and Dionysus dances in the one that transforms everything it touches. Which fire are you being called to right now? And what does it ask of you? Here is what this week is actually asking of you. Not more fire, not more urgency, not the performance of readiness or the frantic activity of someone who has finally been given permission to move. The primary burn requires a clear channel, a confirmed trajectory and a launch pad strong enough to hold the weight of the launch. That is what we have been building across all 5 bodies this week. The physical body is being fed from the earth up, treated as sacred ground rather than the vehicle to be pushed past its limits. The mental body is being trained to go deep on one thing rather than scattering its thrust across 17 directions simultaneously. The emotional body is seeding the frequency it wants to launch from rather than simply reacting to whatever the fire stirs up. The energetic body is clearing and aligning the channels open and sovereign. And the spiritual body is invoking both sacred fires, the tending and the yes, the devotion and the ecstasy, Hestia and Dionysus called in together at the threshold of a new cycle. That is not a passive week. That is the most essential kind of preparation, the work that happens in the hidden infrastructure before the visible launch becomes possible. And I want to name something that has been building in this community that feels directly aligned with everything that this new moon is asking. For months now, I have been developing something that has been quietly taking shape in the background, the way all the most important things do in the Hestia space, tended before it is ready to be seen. The 5 bodies archetype system, 5 distinct archetypal expressions of how a soul moves through the world across 5 bodies, how your particular pattern of fragmentation and integration, your unique combination of gifts and wounds shows up in the way you think and feel and move and connect and create. The quiz that will reveal your primary, secondary, and tertiary archetype blend is almost ready. And yours is in there waiting to be named. I'm telling you now because this new moon in Aries is the seed point. And knowing your archetypal architecture is one of the most direct ways that I know to confirm your trajectory before you ignite. Understand where your particular pattern of fragmentation has been costing you fuel and where your genuine gifts are ready to become the engine of what it is that you're trying to build. The quiz is coming soon. So stay close. And if you're feeling the weight of this threshold in your body right now, that charged aliveness in the chest, the sense of standing at the edge of a trajectory that you can't fully see yet, that is exactly the territory the 5 bodies assessment is built to navigate. Now, the full assessment maps how your natal chart, your constitution, and your fragmentation patterns are meeting moments exactly like this one, where your particular architecture is strong, where the threshold crossing is being blocked by old patterning, consuming fuel you need for your launch. Now, the mini assessment gives you focus clarity on where to begin. If you start with the mini and you decide that you want to upgrade to the full assessment within 30 days, your investment will be fully credited. Fragmentation is the disease. Integration is the medicine. Both assessments are available at GaiaSanctorum.com, and the links are in the description below. And if you want a community where this work is actually witnessed, where you're not performing your healing for an audience, but genuinely walking it alongside other people navigating the same fire, empowered authenticity is waiting for you. It is free, it is completely uncensored, and it is built for integration, not fragmentation. Again, link is in the description. The primary burn is not the end of the mission. It is the beginning of the trajectory. Everything that comes after the coasting, the course corrections, the long arc through space toward the destination depends entirely on the quality of the burn that launched it, on whether the channels were clear, on whether the launch pad held, on whether the trajectory was confirmed before the ignition rather than improvised during it. This is why the earth medicine matters this week, not because it makes the fire smaller. The fire is the fire, and it is extraordinary, but because it makes you a vessel that can actually carry it to where it is going. Venus told you at the opening of this week that the direction your soul is moving and the values that you have reclaimed about your own worth are the same direction. You do not have to choose between what feels right and where you are going. They have become the same thing. Mercury crossed into Aries and found its frequency, the signal clearing, the language arriving for what has been known but not yet spoken. And the sun met Chiron, and the light shone directly on the place where the wound and the gift occupy the same address. Mars met Pluto, and the depth of what you have survived became available as power rather than weight. And then the new moon arrived. 7 planets in Aries, the ignition sequence complete, the launch confirmed. Mars meets Saturn on the final day of this window, and the elder cuts the engine at exactly the right moment, not to stop the mission, but to confirm it. You are in trajectory now. What was seeded at this new moon is moving. What was launched at this primary burn is already in orbit, even if you cannot yet see how far it has traveled. Trust the burn. Trust the launch pad you built. Trust the ground crew you invoked. You are the bridge where the fire of the future meets the wisdom of the bone. You always have been. This week, you lit the fuse. This is Living the Wheel, where we follow the cycles of nature and the cosmos and the wisdom of the 5 bodies to navigate our human experience with ancient knowledge and embodied practices. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Danielle, and I'll see you in the next one.